Hi, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to work on creating a mold in Inventor is what we're using. You can use different software programs for this, but our particular one we're going to be using is Inventor. So what we're actually going to be doing here is you can see here's a bottom plate, here's a top plate, and then here is the actual lure that was created as well. I'll give you guys an example here, what we're going with. So this would be our top plate right here. Okay, and this is our bottom plate here. Notice on the top plate we have our injection hole. That's where the injector places into from the previous videos. So that's kind of what we're working on creating now, and then we will get those 3D printed off for you. So if we look at these, this is right now currently on our top piece, and this is looking at the bottom of the top piece. If I rotate this, you will see, let's zoom out here a little bit. You'll see our hole there for our injector. So when you guys are creating this, make sure, based on which injector you're using, you'd want to get a diameter there that fits your injector so it sits in there nice and tight. I would say not necessarily tight, but it fits in there so that you don't have a lot of gap in there, but you also don't want it to be super tight. So that's the key there. Also, you have a relief valve at the end here. This relief valve is a little bigger than what it needs to be. That's for the purpose of showing it to you guys so you guys are able to see it. And then you have your bolt holes on the corner. So make sure your bolt holes match the bolts that you guys will be using. In this particular case, we have just bolts here that fit in there. So that, it's gonna have to check that, make sure you get the right size, and make those holes accordingly for that. So as we look at this now, this was our top piece. So now we look at our bottom piece. Okay, this is our little reservoir here for as we're filling. This helps to help get the plastic down in, and then allows you to go into your bait. And then of course you have your relief valve here and your 4 corners for your bolts as well. Now notice that the dimension for your width right now is at 3 inches, and the dimension for the depth is at 2 inches. Okay, those are parameters that are set up within both of these top and bottom pieces, and they are separate, so you just got to make sure that they are equal to each other. And you also have the dimension for the height. Right now it's set at 0.25, and then you also have modified dimension for the length and the depth here. So those are parameters I've put into place for this particular one. Depending on the size of the lure you're making, you may want to change those, and depending on the length of your bolt, that's where the height comes into place for your extrusion, because you want to make sure your bolt will fit through there so you can tighten it on the other end. So those are the ways that kind of how the parameters are set up there. If you guys were unsure, parameters underneath manage, and then there's your parameters button, and what it does is allows you to drive your dimensions. So if I wanted to change this dimension here, if I click on here, I can change this to, let's go ahead and go 5 inches. And you see how it makes it nice and big for me. Okay, notice my holes went with it. Okay, so they stayed the proper distance from the edges. So what that means is that those are going to be the same distance from the edge no matter what I make these. So I can come here, do the same dimensions on this piece here, and those holes will be in the same location. This allows us to make sure everything gets lined up correctly for when we go to inject. So that's your top and bottom molds there. And like I said, then here's your bait that's already been created. So what we want to do is we want to now put this bait, and we want to get it onto our mold. I'm going to start with our bottom mold, and I'm going to put it onto here. So to do that, we need to go to File, and we need to create a new assembly. And then I need to place in there those different parts. So the model, example bottom, is the part I'm putting in there. So that's my bottom piece there. Right click, okay. Notice I have a work plane in the center here that's already been added. That's helpful. That's something that's helpful for us down the road. So you want to make sure that you have that in there as well. And then I'm going to also place my bug on here. Open, and I'm going to rotate on my x-axis once and rotate on my z-axis twice. And now you can see how I have it on there. And reason why I did the extra rotations. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this one out of our way now. Is because I want this work plane right here to line up here eventually. So it's one of those things I like to do, that rotating before I put it in. You can use the free rotate button and work with that way. At times that gets a little messy in the arrangement of the objects that way. So I like to do my rotating beforehand if possible. So now I want to constrain, and I want to constrain this plane here to this top surface. Click apply. Now if you notice, what that does is allows my bait to sit halfway down into this bottom plate. So then my other half, my top half, will be up, and that will go into my top plate. And that may vary depending on your bait, thicknesses, things like that. You may have more maybe on a top part of it than you do on a bottom part, things like that. I like to keep my work plane kind of in the center there, so it kind of lines up that way. The next thing I want to do is I wanted to constrain that work plane to that surface right there. Now, right now I'm using the mate constraint, and it likes to turn it on me. So I'm going to go and use the flush constraint, which then all it does is that lines it up, makes it nice and flush, hit apply, and then I need to center this mid plane here with this center plane, work plane here, hit apply. Let me try that one more time here. I think I might have had, yep, I had flush on still. So you want to make sure you make that, click apply. And now, if I rotate this back, I have my bait nice and secure inside my plate. So at this point now, I want to go ahead and save this. And I'm just going to save it, assembly 4 for now, not a problem. And I want to go open up a new part file at this point. So now what I want to do is I'm going to create that assembly, okay, but I want a cavity for where my bait is so I can create that mold. So to do that, I'm using the derive function, which is found underneath the create here. And I open up my assembly. Assembly 4 is the one we want. Click open. And you can see how it's exactly what I just made. And there's different settings for your derive style. We're using the one on the far left, single solid body merging. So that's the one we want to select, and then you can do different negatives. So we want the bug to be a negative, so that allows us to create the cavity. So what is red there will become a cavity for us. So at this point now, I went ahead and clicked OK, got that set up to where I have a cavity now for my bait. Notice that it's not fully up to that relief valve there yet, which is no problem. I'm just going to add a sketch here. Go ahead, get that line back up here so I can see here. I'm going to add a little rectangle, and I can go into this a little bit here. That sense there, it might kind of square that off just a little bit at the top, but that's not too much of an issue. Like I said, you don't need to make it as big as we made it initially here. That was just kind of for demo for you to see it. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit finish sketch, and I'm just going to go ahead and extrude, cut that out. So I'm going to go 0.1. That is the depth of this relief hole there. It's has a radius of 0.1. So I'm going to click OK. So now if I rotate this a little bit for you, you can see how that will allow the plastic to get out through there. So now I need to do the same thing back here in the back to get the plastic into my bait. So once again, sketch on here. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go finish sketch, extrude, cut 0.1. What is it I want to cut? Is that little rectangle there. Click OK. And now you'll see, I like to double check to make sure that it's what we want, like I said. So now I went in a little too far there into this, so I want to go ahead and I actually want to edit that sketch just a little bit. And I'm going to bring this ever so slightly back. So my two corners are right there on the edge. Sketch, and you can get that nice and neat, and you can clean it up a little bit more yourselves. Get it to exactly how you want it. So now at this point, I have that derived out. So now I have a bottom part of my mold fully created. So I'd go ahead and I'd save that, and then I would do the same thing for my top piece. And then what that allowed me to do is once again go ahead and print those off. So the one we just created is this top piece here, okay? And then I could do the same thing for the bottom piece right here. And when I create an STL file for both of those, send them to my 3D printer, get those printed off, and then they will line up for me. And then I will just put my bolts through the holes, and I get all 4 of those nice and lined up. And that's how I would go ahead and get my mold created.